We'll get started here in just a few minutes. All right. Well, hi, everybody. Ken Johnson here with you this evening. And once again, this is day number 4 of Severe Weather Week at News Channel 6. And if you missed it tonight, Garrett talked about transitioning out of La Nina to what's called a neutral weather pattern and what that means for our weather here in Texoma. But I can tell you now that we have officially transitioned out of La Nina. Today, the Climate Prediction Center issued a statement and said that we are no longer in La Nina. La Nina is responsible for creating this weather pattern that helped create the dry conditions, which ultimately led to drought conditions. I'm sure you've noticed that there's been a lot of change in our weather over the last 4 or 5 months. As La Nina started to weaken, we started seeing more and more rain. And this week alone, we've seen well over 2 inches of rain. And for the month, we're well above average, and the lakes are starting to fill back up again. We go through periods of drought and we go through periods of wet weather, but everything always finds a way of reversing itself. Now, don't forget, tomorrow night from 6 to 6:30 on News Channel 6 is our fifth severe weather presentation. We have everything we've been doing this week, and then some will be ran tomorrow between 6 and 6:30 on the news. Instead of the news, it will be the fifth season storms presentation. And if you've missed last night's storm anxiety piece, and I know a lot of you probably did. It's a great piece I put together, put a lot of hard work into it. So I did post that on my page, my YouTube page, and also on my Facebook page. So you can go back and watch that now if you'd like. So tonight I want to talk a little bit about weather information and how you get your weather information. Whenever I was a kid, there were, obviously this has been eons ago, back in the 80s and 90s, there were not a whole lot of ways to get weather information back then. You basically had to get it through means of your weatherman on TV, or maybe a NOAA weather radio, or a tornado sirens. You had to rely on all that kind of stuff to get your weather information. But things have changed a lot since then. And if we look, give me a second. There's a lot of stuff on here that's not supposed to be on here right now. So let me get that off. All right, get that off. That's off. All right, there we go. All right, so when I was a kid, for Christmas one year, my parents got me a little thing called a NOAA weather radio. And I loved it. I listened to it all the time. And I remember I would get mad when... trying to see what there shouldn't be anything. Let's take this off of here. I'm not sure what's causing that. All right, well, that's gone now. All right, so I would get mad when there'd be a chance for some snow in the forecast, and then all of a sudden the weather service would take it out. I'd get mad. I'll never forget. I used to get mad at that. I'd wake up every morning, I'd turn it on, I'd listen to the forecast, and then every time the weather was bad, I'd listen to it. That'd give you radar updates. This is before I had access to the Weather Channel or anything like that. We lived out in the country, so you didn't have an opportunity to have cable. You didn't have all the news sources that, of course, you have access to. This is before DirecTV. We had basically your NBC, Fox, ABC, CBS, and that was it. PBS, that was it. That's all you had when I was growing up. So we didn't have ways to get weather. So I had to rely on this little NOAA weather radio. And of course, you could pick up your phone and call back then. You could call Time and Temp Plus. You could get your temperature off of that. And of course, anytime we'd have a threat for ice or snow, I'd be calling that all the time. What's the temperature? What's the temperature? What's the temperature? And then you could call the weather line too, and you could hear the weatherman. Of course, back then, this is back when I was a kid, the NBC station WLBT in Jackson, Mississippi had a weatherman by the name of Woody Asaph. He was the Skip McBride of that market. Doing it for a long, long time. He passed away many years ago now, but that was the guy everybody loved to watch back in the 80s. Unlike Skip, he wasn't a true meteorologist. He was just a personality is what he was, kind of like Willard Scott. But people loved him. So anyway, that's who you call. I can almost remember 948 8833. I still remember that to this day. 948-8833. I dialed it so many times it's in my head here. I can't remember what my wife tells me 5 minutes ago, let alone why should I be remembering a number from 20, 40 years ago now. That's crazy. 20, 30 years ago now. So I would call that, and you'd get the forecast there too. Of course, he just basically said whatever the weather service said. So if he said the weather service is calling for 50% chance for rain, he did too. So you'd wait and you'd watch the weather 5, 6, and 10 o'clock. And then as I got a little bit older, we got a real meteorologist in town there in Jackson named David Hartman. I actually would go on to work under him in the early parts of my career, but I loved how he told weather because he was a real meteorologist. He didn't go on with the weather service, said he did his own thing, and he was always right. So I wound up loving him too. So, but anyway, whenever the weather would start to get bad, your NOAA weather radio back then would sound an alarm, and we still have these to this day. It does it via antenna. It's a repeater that it hits, I think, and the repeater sends out a signal, and it hits. And you could program these weather service radios to pick up on whatever counties you want it to warn for. And I always suggest if you do have one of these to try to get it not only for your county but also the surrounding counties too. That way you'll know what's coming and moving in your direction. They're not super easy to program. YouTube is probably the best bet to go on and try to learn how to program those. If you do have one and are having trouble, let me know, and I could probably find some resources for you. So back then, you didn't have many ways of getting weather information, and whenever a warning would get issued, basically all you had was this little NOAA weather radio, and of course, to this day, we still have these. And by these, I mean this is a tornado siren, outdoor tornado sirens. The emergency management of each county has a button they can push to turn these on. Most of them look like this and are on top of a pole, and they spin around slowly. You hear them at the first of the month. But I tell you what, you'd be outside and playing when I was a kid, and that thing go off, whoo, you'd be hightailing it home. You'd be scared. I'd be scared to death. Or I'd be asleep at night, and you could hear that thing go off, because back in Mississippi, remember, we got nighttime tornadoes, and we'd go straight to the closet or straight to the hallway. You didn't have wall-to-wall weather coverage back then. Basically, you once a warning was issued back then, you either turned the radio on to try to get some information, or you went to the local little TV station. There was a little place on the TV that you could go and the NOAA weather would broadcast, the warning. The emergency management would broadcast the warning, but the information was very, very limited, and you were scared. You didn't know what was going on at all. So warnings, we got them through, of course, the crawl on the TV. That's been that way for a long time. NOAA weather radio, your FM, AM radio back then. Remember, we used to have FM, AM radios, little battery operated radios, or the tornado sirens. Of course, that was the main way, was the tornado sirens. I remember one time that my buddy and I were out playing. It was in April, and the tornado sirens went off. There was sunshine and some clouds, and I ran inside, and the emergency broadcast network was broadcasting the warning. And my buddy came up to me. My mom says it's just a test. And my mom said, no, it's not. They're talking about it right here. No, it's a test. It's just sunshine outside. There's no tornado coming. Well, what we didn't know back then as kids is sunshine and tornadoes actually can be a bad thing, because the sun can really help heat it up and get you super unstable. So oftentimes, if you're seeing sun prior to a tornado coming in, you're real unstable, and the storms can be super strong. So we didn't know that back then. So, but anyway, we didn't have the access to what we have these days. And I still love the NOAA weather radio. I still think that is a great thing to have, okay? But we can't rely on outdoor sirens, because they may malfunction, or you may not hear it. If the weather's real bad, real stormy, you may not hear it, especially if you're inside. So that they're there for a reason. That was mostly old technology. These days, they'll still sound them, and people still watch out and listen for them. But that's not the best way. The best way would be a NOAA weather radio. All right. So let's talk about another way to get your weather information. Of course, these days, the best way, in my opinion, outside of a NOAA weather radio would be just a weather app. Of course, our app, the First Alert 6 weather app, is a great tool. You can go into your settings and you can program it real easily to program it for your location and for what warnings and advisories you want to get. Now, whenever an alert's issued, whether that be by the Weather Service or we're doing some type of an alert here, you get that and it can notify you if you have all that set up. We have radar on there you can look at. Now, that's a composite. That is not what we call single site Doppler radar. It's a composite of all the radars together. So you don't get you can tell where it's raining or where storms are at, but, at least from a storm tracking tool, it's decent, but it's not the best. There are other apps out there like RadarScope, Weather Omega. Those are probably better if you're more into weather and you know how to, read radar and whatnot. But that app, our app, is good because it not only gives you the opportunity to get the forecast and to get those warnings, but you can also watch our live streaming coverage there no matter where you are at. So that is one way. That's another way to get warnings, and that's another way to watch what's going on. But of course, these days, and I did a little social media experiment a while back, and about a week or so ago. And that experiment was to ask you how you got your local news and weather. Overwhelming majority of you said social media or apps. Most do not, from my page anyway, and I know there's a lot of people that still do, but most people that responded do not watch or rely on the local TV anymore to get their weather and news information. Most of it is social media or apps. And I try telling people, if you are not streaming your weather coverage on multiple platforms, you're really missing out. You need to be on YouTube. You need to be on Facebook Live. I'm not a big fan of Twitter. Twitter's all right, but I don't think it's a great source for streaming your weather coverage. YouTube and Facebook are the top two. I mean, probably Instagram. I'm not a big Instagram guy. I don't like Instagram that much. There are a lot of other social media platforms that are out there too. A lot of them that I don't even know anything about. TikTok is becoming a big one. Of course, they're trying to ban that now, so who knows what the future of that is. But I still think that the top 3 ways for you to get your weather information would be the First Alert 6 weather app, or your favorite weather app of your local TV station, wherever you are, because they usually will stream their coverage on that. So if you're in Dallas, I'm sure there's a station near that streamed. I know there are. Social media, Facebook, YouTube, we try to stream that. I know at News Channel 6, currently we just stream on Facebook from the TV station, but I'm trying to get to where we also post on YouTube as well. I'm doing that here on my page now some. Not as much as I'd like to, but I'm doing it some. And also, and like I say, Facebook is the other way that we really do it. We really don't do anything else. So those are the ways you do it. Now these days when we get a warning, we're going to be live on the TV. That's still your go-to source because we're going to be on there. But usually we're streaming Facebook, YouTube, or Facebook Live and TV at the same time. Our policy here, all right, so it used to be a situation, my mom tells me I ramble on too much, but you know what, that's what this is for. This is kind of like a live podcast, to be honest about it. And I'm developing other things too for that. But what was I going to say? I have a tendency to lose my train of thought when I go other places. All right, so let me explain kind of the evolution of how things happen in the weather. There used to be something called weather wars between TV stations. And it was about who could flex their muscle the most. So TV stations back in the 90s, early 2000s were buying their own Doppler radar. We have one out there in our yard, but it no longer works. It was too expensive to maintain. And the way technology is today, you don't need it. Because back then you were relying on getting your feed from the National Weather Service, and the feed was pretty slow. It was somewhere in the 10 to 15 minute range for updates. So people went out and news stations went out and started buying their own Doppler radars. and they would promote the hell out of it. And it would be a situation where, hey, we got live radar here, minute by minute, no delays. And that would be that'd be your ammunition against other TV stations that didn't have one. Other TV station, 15-minute delay, we get you live right here. So that was kind of the weather, and they wanted you wall to wall. I mean, it didn't matter. Tornado warning didn't matter where you were at. When I was in Jackson, tornado warning, you better be on the air, or your news director, your boss was going to come in and was going to blast you. And you were going to get it. You better be on with that. It didn't matter if people were mad about it or not. It didn't matter where. Tornado warning in the viewing area, you better be on. And I can tell another story about that too. In the summertime in Mississippi, there's these afternoon thunderstorms, kind of like Houston and kind of like Florida. Every afternoon there's thunderstorms there in the summertime. But they're driven by the heat of the daytime type stuff. They'll produce a lot of lightning and some heavy rain, but they usually don't last very long. They pop up, pop down. They're called pulse thunderstorms. They pulse up, pulse down real fast. They may produce some brief gusty winds. And there might be isolated damage, wind gusts here that might produce a little damage here or there. But the Weather Service in Jackson will always issue, and when I was working there, almost every single day would issue warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings for these pop-up thunderstorms in the afternoon. I hated covering them. It got old after a while because it's not what I consider real severe weather. Real severe weather is what we get out here in the spring. All right, it's big hail, it's big winds, it's big tornadoes, that kind of stuff. Yeah, that stuff was just kind of mediocre stuff they would give. They'd issue warnings for it. So the general manager and news director, of course, they want to be the weather leader and they want to lead with weather. I mean, if there's anything out there, we got to lead with weather. Well, it's getting a news time. Weather Service, sure enough, I was filling in for my chief meteorologist back then. Sure enough, the Weather Service issued a warning right at the top of the newscast. Severe thunderstorm warning. It's one of those little old blah storms in the summertime there. And, of course, I knew that they wanted us to lead with weather, but I was like, well, I mean, I'm looking at what's called a rundown. If you look here, this is what a rundown is. It shows you where everything is in the newscast, where everything falls. And I said, I'm the second story, so I'll just let it ride. They'll come to me pretty quick. Man, my general manager came out there right after first weather and absolutely chewed me out. In front of everybody, embarrassed me really bad. Man, I never cared for him after that. I mean, he absolutely blasted me. So, I mean, that's how the weather wars were back then. I mean, you had to be the first on, last off. Well, let's fast forward into the 2023 time frame. Well, we got so many different ways of giving you weather information. Like I say, TV, your apps, your social media, so many different ways. Radio, so many different ways. That, I feel like we don't have to cover up your programming like we used to. Matter of fact, my current general manager, Richard Haddix, is like, hey, look, if it's a tornado and it's going to be really threatening some people, let's go on with it. But, be smart. And if it's not anything too urgent or too serious, let's try not to cover it up. So the way that we try to do it now is we try to cover most of our severe weather updates over social media with just some cut-ins on your TV, because we do have older people, a lot of older folks that don't, and other people, not even just older folks, but other people too, that don't have access to the internet and social media. So when we do these weather updates over here on the TV station, like I say, we're Facebook Live and we're on the app. Now we just try to cut in over the commercial breaks. That means it's called a national commercial break. It's not local advertisement. It's national stuff. So we try to cut in over that so it don't interrupt your programming. But if it's serious, let's say it's a big wind event about to nail Wichita Falls. I'm just using this as an example. I'm not trying to say I wouldn't do this for Graham or Vernon or anywhere else. Let's just say a big wind event's about to hit Wichita Falls. And Wichita Falls is our most populated area with over 100,000 people here. We'll probably go on and interrupt your programming for that. Or if I sense rotation in a thunderstorm, we got a tornado warning, really anywhere in our viewing area. But let's say it's about to threaten Wichita County, Wichita Falls. We're going to be on for that. We're going to interrupt the programming. You know what I get a lot that people are upset, get upset about a lot, you'd be surprised that people can be really nasty. I've got thick skin though. I mean, I've been dealing with this for 20 plus years, and if you email me, the chance, and I know what it is. When I see an email pop up, I don't even read it. You're wasting your time if you email me to complain. I'm not going to answer it. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to read it because I have a job to do. I have a policy that I have to follow, and I would rather you be mad at me for interrupting your programming than for somebody to be mad at me because I wasn't there when they needed me. You'll get over it. You'll get over missing your program, and we'll re-air that program. But if it's somebody's life in danger and we can make a difference, we're going to do that. That's not only our policy, but it's my policy too. But the good news is that is rare. It only happens maybe a couple times a year, and most of what I do is on social media. So you've got so many ways to get it these days. There's no reason to not be able to get your weather information now. And like I said, I know a lot of people say that the only time they watch the TV is when we have bad weather, when warnings are issued. So, but it's also good, though, to watch the local news and weather because, there's things that we put in our weather forecast on TV that you won't get other. If you're using an app to get your forecast with, the chances are pretty good that the app that you're using, let's just say you're using, let's say AccuWeather or something like that. They're based up in, I think, Pennsylvania, somewhere up there. That's where their headquarters is. So they don't have a local meteorologist going in there and doing the forecast. It's basically AI or basically just a derived computer model that throws numbers, and if you watch it, it'll change and periodically update throughout the day. And sometimes it can be good, but a lot of times it's not good. One day the technology will probably get there and AI will be better than me. But especially in this part of the country, it's really, really difficult to forecast weather. Look at how difficult it's been this week. Models have been showing warm weather and clouds have held temperatures down. It takes a meteorologist to get in there and know that the models are wrong. A trained meteorologist to tell that they're wrong and actually put together a more accurate forecast. That's why you need to pay attention to your local news source. Not just rely on a national app. Plus, those national apps, a lot of times, they're not going to do wall-to-wall weather coverage for you like we will. And it's probably coming. There's probably a day coming where they will. And I know there's guys out there like Ryan Hall that are on that's on YouTube, and I know he does a lot of severe weather coverage. He does a good job too. I've got to give credit where credit is due. Okay, if I'm gonna throw a shade at some of these guys out there that are a bunch of clowns, I got to give credit for the good guys too. And Ryan Hall, while I know he hypes up weather a little bit, and again, the reason he does it is because, he needs to get viewers and it generates viewership. But his coverage is really good on YouTube. But, he may not be on for our weather down here. That's why you got to rely on people like me. Plus, he doesn't forecast in our area, so he doesn't know weather like I do. Or like Lexi up at Channel 7 or Michael Bowling down at Channel 3. All right, so I know we have a competition. But at the end of the day, these guys are my colleagues in the weather and my market, and I'm just as competitive as anybody else, and I do consider it friendly competition. But at the end of the day, I want you to get a good source of weather, no matter who you trust. I want you to be able to go to them and be able to rely on them. And these guys are local here. I want you to keep it local. These guys are local and they watch weather like me too. Now they don't have as much experience as I have, but they still do a good job. So, just as long as you have a way to get good local information is what I really, really hope for. If you want to watch us, great. If not, that's fine too. Just whatever it is you got to do. Well, that's really it. Keep in mind tomorrow night we have the 5th season on, and I'll try to stream it here. Let's see here. Dale says, things were great around here back in the 70s. The 79 tornado really opened the eyes and views on scanners and listeners. The things morphed around the Doppler radar and now social media. The times, they are a-changing. Yes, they are, Dale. They have changed a lot, and it's going to, the landscape of the weather world will continue to change. I can foresee, probably not anytime soon, but I can foresee perhaps a situation where your local weather person, what I can see a situation down the road where you'll no longer have as many local news stations in the country. There will be a regional place. Let's just use example Dallas, and they'll have little satellites with maybe a reporter that's assigned to Wichita Falls, and you'll get your news from these regional places, and that's how it'll go. There'll be a weatherman that'll be at one regional place and cover a large area. I can foresee that happening at some point in the future. I can also foresee it happening where you have AI that's giving you your weather forecast. I mean, let's just face it. People try to find ways to save money. That's not happening. Nobody's told me that. I can just see that potentially happening in the future, where you have regionalized instead of local. You already see it some with Spectrum and places like Spectrum cable companies and things like that too. But eventually, I believe that's probably the way it's going to wind up being. No time soon, but some point maybe in my lifetime or thereafter, you'll probably see local shops shutting down, and you'll probably see, like I say, AI doing weather. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm not right. Maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I am. I don't want to see that happen. We have an issue right now in weather, and it's just the news in general. We can't make hires. It's not just our station. It's every station that is out there. If you're a meteorologist or a reporter looking for a job, right now is a great time. There's a lot of good paying jobs out there too. But if you're a station that short staff, short reporters, short a weather meteorologist, not easy to find them. We just made a hire, I think, a guy in Mississippi. I'm ready for him to get over here. Garrett's leaving us in May. So I'm not excited about him leaving, but, that's life. It happens. All right, everybody. Well, I've enjoyed my talk with you here today. I love every one of you guys out there, and thank you for trusting me with your weather here. Of course, we'll wrap things up tomorrow night with the fifth severe weather presentation from 6 to 6:30. I'll try to stream that here on my page too, and then I'll try to upload it if I can to my YouTube page. It won't stream live on YouTube, but I'll try to upload it on my YouTube page. Watch my storm anxiety piece. I got it loaded on Facebook and on YouTube. You can watch that now too. And remember, just when we get bad weather, there's no signs of anything bad heading our way anytime soon. I'm ready to get rid of these clouds and get some warm weather in here. I think that's going to head our way finally on Saturday. Tomorrow should be sunnier than the last couple of days, but Saturday should feature warmer, breezier weather. But it doesn't look super warm for spring break. There'll be some warm weather, but there's going to be some cool weather there in there too. We're doing a lot better on rainfall. We're finally out of this La Nina weather pattern, and the weather pattern's responding. It's a lot wetter. That probably sets the stage for perhaps more of an active, but probably more of an average kind of storm season this year. So we'll see how all that plays out. I'll have my forecast, my outlook for the spring severe weather season tomorrow night during the fifth season as well. But yeah, I'll tell you right now, there's no skill involved at all in long range forecasting. If anybody says I can accurately predict weather 2 months from now, they are lying. You cannot. All you do is you look at signals like La Nina versus El Nino, and you kind of go with that. So it's just really throwing a dart at the dartboard. Anything really beyond 7 days really is kind of difficult to do, and it's like I say, there's not a lot of skill involved in it. So all right, guys, y'all have a great night. I'm going home to fix a quick bite to eat, and then I'll be back in here for the newscast, and we'll see you tonight. I'm off next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I'll be taking off a few days for spring break to hopefully spend some time with my kiddos. They're coming home from college, and we're going to try to hang out with